What's up, guys? Welcome back to Talking Nutrition. Mike is back. First of all, we had a good chat a couple weeks ago about testosterone. We did a deep dive, kind of like like the worst kind of factors that lower your testosterone, and also kind of things that you can do to kind of like, let's say, fix that, right, or maybe mitigate the damage at least.
Yeah.
And then we also were going to get into shift work, which is super important because I think that's one of those things where it's going to have a big impact on, so many things, but definitely on testosterone as well. So Let me first say this. If you did not check out episode 57 yet, just pause this one, go back, and then afterwards catch up for this one, because I think they're going to tie into each other really well. And that being said, in the meantime, Mike, last couple of weeks, any updates or just working?
Nothing changing. No, nothing's changing in my life. It's pretty static these days. It seems like just the other day we recorded that podcast. I did get a lot of good feedback on social media about that podcast, and
cool.
That's what I really like, because it always seems to cause a lot of questions, and then people will reach out and be like, "Hey, I heard this. You talked about boron. Would that be good for me?" or something like that, right? So I got a lot of questions like that, which is always good, right? It's good. So
I feel like that was one of those episodes where like that's a good one to go back to from time to time. You have like the episodes where it's like sometimes Q&A, kind of like your weekly thing. That was definitely one with the most downloads like in the first week, I think, already, which is super cool.
Is that right? Good. That's such a big topic, and I think we get on a podcast here and we talk about it, and our knowledge base is fairly well rounded about it. But there's people out there who are like I had somebody reach out to me and they were just like, yeah, I've got all these symptoms, but I just don't know what I should be doing. Right. And it's like, it's very overwhelming. Right. So I think it's important to talk about it, bring it to light. And that's a topic I could go into for multiple episodes, right? It's really complex, but it does tie into the shift work quite well, because we just touched on it last time, the effects of shift work on testosterone. But this time we're just going to talk about shift work in general and how it affects the body, maybe how to mitigate the effects of shift work, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, because I have a few clients who work at a hospital or psychiatric ward, and we talk about this stuff every now and then, and I try to really educate them on the importance of circadian rhythm, and we're trying to do our best, but it's one of those things where it's tough. There's a big hospital here. There's a lot of people who work at the hospital. I know a lot of nurses, so that's actually also why I wanted to bring you back on to talk about this stuff, because I want to share this with them, you know what I mean? And just have an actual conversation instead of like the 30-second, 60-second reel on Instagram or the TikTok or the post.
Yeah.
Like, let's dive a little deeper, you know what I mean? Because I think people really need to understand this stuff. And of course, hey, maybe, some people, they're not going to do it forever. Okay, cool. But for those who are going to keep doing shift work, like, let's at least know what it does, try to mitigate like the damage, you know what I mean? Because it is going to have an impact.
It is going to have an impact, and there's a lot more careers out there now involving shift work, and that just has to do with industry working 24 hours, right? The common ones would be like in the medical field or law enforcement. That's where we definitely see the nighttime shifts happening. Man, I don't even know where to start on this. I've been doing shift work now. I turned 50 in October, and I started my career in emergency medicine I was 21, so almost 30 years. So 30 years of shift work. I'm definitely not an expert in any field at all. I'd like to think I have a little bit of experience talking about shift work, though. So I feel like I can speak from somewhat of a position of authority. I know there's times when I'm just like, I don't know about the supplement field. I don't know about the nutrition field. There's guys with PhDs out there. But when it comes to shift work, I feel like I kind of know a thing or two, at least from a personal level of what works for me, what I've seen work with my clients, and really what hasn't worked. And when you come right down to the basics of it, it's like, for millions of years of evolution, we've woken up with the sun and we've gone to sleep when the sun went down. And our neurotransmitters, our hormones, they've all been sort of based around this, like this circadian rhythm entrainment of when this happens, right? It's like, without getting all woo woo, and I'm very much a science guy. When I talk about woo woo, I'm talking about like hippie stuff. It's like, we're very connected with the earth. We're very connected.
Oh
So
yeah.
when we go against that, when it's like, when I'm awake at 2 a.m. and I'm doing something that requires a high level of physical ability and cognition, that's going completely against millions of years of evolution. And that can cause a major disruption. And we call it circadian rhythm disruption, right? Um, and I think one of the most damaging mindsets would be to have is to think, oh, I'm immune to this. I'm so healthy that, sleep deprivation doesn't affect me, or it's like that. Oh, I can run on 4 hours of sleep. I'm going to be fine, right? Um, Everybody has a capacity to do that for a while. That's called your resiliency. Some people are more resilient than others. That has to do with genetics. That has to do with your mindset. But without a doubt, we were talking about this before we started recording. Um, there is a point when stuff will fall apart. I've seen people last a very long time doing shift work, being high performance based athletes, and it's actually quite amazing. I've also seen people who have gotten into a shift work career, and literally within less than a year, they've exited that career because they can't handle that sleep deprivation at all, right? And that's not a sign of weakness. That's just, it just is. It's going to affect them more than others, right? Um, so without a doubt, you need to recognize the fact that shift work or sleep deprivation is a massive stressor. And I think right out of the gate, once you recognize that, it's like, you're like, okay, this is not a good thing for me, but I've chosen a career in shift work. What can I do to mitigate these effects? How can I get through this, right? Um, and this is going to be real basic. And I talked in the last podcast, I talked about the really unsexy stuff, right? That's like, having your nutrition dialed, drinking your water, going to bed on time. The same thing comes with shift work. It's like, you're taking sleep away. What's the number one thing you should do? You should try to replace it. Now, um, on an hour for hour basis, you can't just make that up, right? So if I work all night and I come home and I sleep during the day, it's not the same as going to bed at 10 p.m. and getting up at 6 a.m., right? Assuming like a normal pattern of like 8 hours of sleep during nighttime hours. It doesn't equate to the same, right? Um, and it's not like, if I get 4 hours here, I'm up for 6, I get another 2 hours. Oh, then later on, I get another 2 hours. That 4 plus 2 plus 2, that actually doesn't equal 8. It's not the same when you break it up like that. Um, it's not a bad thing if you can try to do that, but it's just on. Does that make sense on an hour for hour basis? It doesn't add up.
Yeah.
Am I making sense right now? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
know.
think
Yeah.
it's important that we realize that, because I mean it helps, and napping is one of
Yeah.
those things that's like one of those
Hmm.
tools that we should be heavily
It's a
relying
tool.
on.
Yep.
But it's not going
Yeah.
to be the same.
No, it's not going to be the same. Not everybody can do it, and why that is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I have a very limited capacity to nap, and that might be because I've done 30 years of shift work. It's like, if the planets align and I'm able to nap during the day, which doesn't usually happen when you have kids, um, 20 minutes, and it's good. And there's lots of really good research on sleep, and that's one good thing. If somebody was a total nerd and they wanted to go down the deep rabbit hole about sleep, the effects of sleep deprivation, there's lots of research. When it comes to certain supplements, sometimes certain pharmaceuticals, there's not a lot of research, right? There's a lot of anecdote, but there's not research. With sleep and the effects of sleep deprivation, something like napping, how do we mitigate these effects? Um, there's a lot of research. So yeah, naps are an option, right? And everyone's probably heard, it's like, oh, try to keep them within like 20, 30 minutes. If you go beyond that, you're getting into some like deep delta wave sleep, and you don't want to do that in the middle of the day. You'll wake up, you'll feel groggier. Like if you end up having like an hour and a half nap, right? And you'll wake up, one, it might be harder for you to go to sleep later, but you're also waking up in a certain sleep cycle. And we naturally will do that through the night, right? Like if I had a graph, I could sort of draw it out of our our sleep cycles, and they look like an S wave, like a sine wave, right? We come in and out of these certain sleep cycles, and then as the night progresses, they get lighter and lighter, and then boom, we naturally wake up. Um, if let's say I'm at the fire hall and I go to sleep at 10 on a night shift because it's quiet, I get a call at like 1:30 in the morning, 2 a.m. Sometimes waking up is extremely difficult. It's like you're super groggy. It's hard to think. Other times, let's say if it was at like 4 a.m., tones go off, boom, I'm wide awake instantly, right? I'm like, wow, what's the difference? And it's like when you wake up in that deep delta wave sleep, or REM sleep sometimes, that can cause some cognition issues, right? So getting back to the nap, yeah, it's a tool in the toolbox, right? Um, but what somebody should be doing is, let's talk about, like, if you're coming off a night shift, what do you do? Do you work out? Do you come home and eat? Do you go right to sleep? Do you have a cup of coffee and stay up? Like, what's the best practice? Generally speaking, and it's very individual. Generally speaking, though, sleep's your priority, right? Um, I had a client for years and years who was an NICU nurse, and she'd work nights, and she was a high performance athlete. And when she would work her 12s, she would come home and go right to sleep, right? For her, this worked really well. And she would sleep really heavy. She did a good job of sleeping during the day. Then she'd get up and then she would train in the afternoon, right? Not the most optimal schedule at all, but for her, being a full-time nurse and also pretty close to a full-time international ranked athlete, that worked really well for her. Some people will come off a night shift and they'll be awake, right? They'll be like, the cortisol's hit, they're awake, the sunlight's hit their eyes in the morning, and they're like, well, I'm already awake, I might as well train. It's also not a bad option. And I sound wishy-washy on this because there's really no black and white book on what to do in and around shift work, right? But if you come off a shift and you train, keep in mind your cortisol is probably going to be really elevated, right?
Yeah.
It might be difficult to sleep after that, right? That's why my number one suggestion would be prioritize your sleep first, then train, right?
Yeah.
And I'm always chucking in the training because I'm just assuming this is me being naive. I'm assuming everybody works out every day, right? So you have to sort of work your training in and around that.
Yeah.
So
I think, if anything, too, because that might even just be a nice way to kind of get started with the day, too, like after you sleep, you just kind of get moving, I feel like that's likely better than the other way around. But then again, it's tough because I've had clients, and I still do, who have different shifts, and then they're also doing CrossFit, and then they're also kind of like tied to when the classes are, and then when they try to nap. I mean, right now we have 24/7, daylight. People have a hard time sleeping,
Yeah,
So it's tough.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no easy answer. And it's really, if someone's working, like, let's say if someone's working with a coach, that coach has to, work with the client and try to figure out what would be the best schedule for that client. And so far, we've only talked about sleep and training, right? We also need to talk about, how does nutrition fit in there too, right?
Yeah.
Where do supplementations fit in there? And it's really, you got this big monster of sleep deprivation, and we're kind of working all the other pieces around it. It is trial and error. There is no perfect fit for that, right? The sleep is the priority, though, for sure, because you can only burn the candle at both ends so long. And trust me, I have done it all. I have done 3 days without sleep. I've done all sorts of stuff to try to like maximize sleep, every pharmaceutical under the sun, over the counter supplements. And it really, there's no hack. And that's one thing I've said over and over again. Like, there's things that you can do that are biohacks, right? There's supplements, and there's this, there's that. When it comes to sleep deprivation, there is no hack. There's nothing that will replace sleep. Nothing. Not even like really interesting pharmaceuticals like modafinil. There's nothing that will replace it. And it's interesting, a lot of the research has been done in the military field about this, trying to maximize the output of soldiers. And they've done some nasty stuff over the years. But But I mean, it's very interesting research subjects, but
Yeah.
you cannot get away with sleep deprivation. And that this all circles back to that circadian rhythm disruption and how this is going to negatively affect your hypothalamic pituitary axis, right? Hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, your HPA axis, right?
Yeah.
And over time, how that's going to affect your cortisol production, how that's going to affect your testosterone production, your DHEA production, right? So, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more, right? So,
I'm thinking, right? Because other than sleep, obviously being the biggest one, when
mhm.
people come to me and they are shift workers, I get this a lot. They're like 9 out of 10 times they're already on like melatonin,
Yep.
um, which is kind of like the one that everyone kind of knows about. I feel
Hmm.
like at least when I've tried it, and I've heard from most people, and maybe it depends on the kind of the dose, but a lot of people feel like worse when they wake up on melatonin. Like, what's your experience with that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I got a lot of experience with melatonin. Melatonin's a very interesting supplement, very interesting hormone. So we secrete melatonin from our pituitary gland. No, sorry, our pineal gland. So light goes. So when we normally have the most secretion, it's like things get quiet, sun goes down, lights go down, we start to chill out. Cortisol drops. Cortisol is antagonistic to melatonin, right? So in the morning, sun rises, I'm sitting here in my window, it faces east, sun's hitting my eyes. Boom, my cortisol rises, melatonin gets shut down, right? At night, the opposite happens. Cortisol drops, melatonin is allowed to be secreted. That starts to put us to sleep and keeps us to sleep, right? Um, so it's an endogenously secreted hormone. Now, supplementation of melatonin, um, it's interesting because in Canada for a while, melatonin was considered a banned substance. We weren't allowed to buy that. Is that from your end or my end?
I didn't hear anything.
Oh, hold on. Something happened with my AirPods. I got my kids playing. I'm gonna do this. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, I'm good. Okay, I had my AirPods in, but for whatever reason, they connected with my kid's iPad. Anyways, where was I? Talking about melatonin. Um, the endogenous secretion. Yeah, so with supplementation, it was banned in Canada for a while because it's a hormone. You'll hear stuff about negative feedback. And when I talk about negative feedback, it's like, so if my testosterone's low, I start taking testosterone. My body's like, oh, cool, I got this testosterone. I'm going to quit making it, right? That's negative feedback. Um, it's not as clear cut with melatonin. There's interesting studies out of the 50s or 60s, I believe, with blind subjects where they gave them 50 milligrams of melatonin over a long period of time and then stopped supplementing them, and they still had their own endogenous secretion. And what's interesting is that they're blind, so the receptors in their eyes weren't um, being utilized for the secretion, right? So it didn't affect secretion. So it was a very cool study, but it showed that there was no negative feedback, so no downregulation of endogenous production of melatonin. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a great supplement. And as you've experienced as a coach, and as I've experienced as a coach, and using it myself, um, it doesn't always work in everybody. Some people take melatonin, they're like, "Oh my god, I had the best sleep ever," right? Other people take it and they're like, "Oh, I feel kind of groggy in the morning." Um, and then other people take it and they're like, "Wow, I felt like I was wired all night, like I had drinking a cup of coffee. Like, what's up with that?" So it can have a varied effect in individuals, and this really depends on the dose and then how you metabolize it. Most of the time, people are taking way too much. That's the thing, and it's crazy. Like when I'll go, this is more so in the U.S. than Canada, but when I travel to the U.S., you look at their shelves. Let's say you go to like Walmart or something like that, or Target. Everything has melatonin in it. They got products for kids that has melatonin in it, up to like 10 milligrams, 20 milligrams. And I'm like, holy cow, like they're really cranking on the melatonin in the US. No wonder they got sleep issues. You can have a rebound insomnia from using melatonin, where you get kind of like this paradoxical effect. And I noticed this early on when I started to dose melatonin. I was like, oh, I read all this great stuff about melatonin. It's this awesome, hormones, the antioxidant effect. It helps your gut. Like there's a lot of play between melatonin and the gut also. So I'm like, wow, this is a great supplement. I'm going to start taking it. I'm going to help my sleep, get my sleep dialed. Didn't work at all, right? So the rebound insomnia with me was quite profound. And I go back and I'll revisit the melatonin every now and then, sometimes in a really low dose. Like we're talking like 300 micrograms, maybe 500 micrograms. Doesn't seem to have a great effect with me, but also 30 years of shift work, right? But for most people, they're taking too much. And a lot of the times it's more of what's your lifestyle like, right? So if all the lights are on in your house, you've got an iPhone in your face, you're on the computer, you're watching something on Netflix, you're doing that literally 10 minutes before you go to bed, you're not really allowing your own endogenous melatonin secretion to happen because you're still cranking your cortisol, right? And especially from backlit electronic devices. They're going to give out the specific spectrum. It's I believe it's blue wavelength light that's going to shut down. I'm either going to mix that up with red or blue, and I think it's blue wavelength light that's going to shut down your melatonin secretion. Right? It's basically causing more cortisol to happen. Right?
Yeah.
So most of the time, it's lifestyle factors. People don't need more melatonin. We don't have a melatonin deficiency. What we have is lifestyle factors that are impeding our ability to go to sleep. Now,
Yeah.
you can put shift workers, and I'm talking about general public there. Shift workers are almost like an entirely different animal. Um, if you have to be awake at night, like if it's, let's say my shift is like, I'll make up a shift. I work 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. So when I do nights, I do 14-hour nights, right? And that's a long time to be awake, right? Is there a time and place for melatonin there? I would argue no. Like when I come off a shift in the morning, I don't want to be dosing melatonin because I'm naturally not going to be dosing melatonin at that time, right? As far as my endogenous secretion, right? So melatonin works really well. Like if you look at the studies on melatonin, where it has the greatest degree of efficacy is with jet lag and resetting circadian rhythm. So if I was to fly to Norway and it's 3 p.m. there and it's like, well, it's what, 3:30 there, it's 7:30 here. There's a huge time difference, right? So to entrain my circadian rhythm, I'd have to get onto Norway time as quick as possible. Melatonin could help with that, right? That's where I've seen a great deal of efficacy is like just getting into that certain time zone. But on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't seem to help with shift work.
Yeah.
Now, that said, anecdotally, some people love it, right? Um, and that's something also, once again, I could answer everything with like, well, it depends. It's individual, right? It really depends. Some people handle it well. I've had clients take 10 milligrams and they love it. And they're just like, yeah, I'm not groggy in the morning. I don't have a melatonin hangover. I slept a solid 8 hours. I feel great, right? In that regard, it can be really benign. It's a relatively benign supplement in that you can take ridiculous doses, and I don't recommend anybody does. I did listen to a podcast a few years back, and there's a physician out of the U.S. And he was recommending like 50 up to 100 milligrams, and I was like, "Wow, that's a really big dose." Um, I don't know what his basis for that was, and I don't recommend doing that. You generally will get into rebound insomnia if you get into like the 3, the 5, the 7, the 10 milligram doses. So
Yeah.
it's individual for sure.
So as for the jet lag stuff, I
Mm-hmm.
would kind of like almost compare that to when someone is on a certain shift or a week, and then the next week is like a different, or would that
Mm-hmm.
would that be a scenario where you could utilize that?
Maybe. Yeah. And I know those shifts you're talking about where they're sort of like escalating, where it's like someone might work days, you might be working like a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Then they switch to like a 12 p.m. to a 12 a.m. And then maybe
Yeah.
they're on like I don't even know, 3 a.m. to 3 p.m., like something
Yeah.
crazy like that. It sort of gets later and later and later.
Yeah.
If you're trying to sort of like set your sleep up for that, that might be an option, right?
Yeah.
Because in a scenario like that, you really want what I call pre-sleep, right? Like pre-sleep before your shift. Because if you think about, let's say a normal working person is like, go to bed at 10, get up at 6 a.m., get ready, go to work for 8 a.m., right?
Hmm.
So I basically have 8 hours of pre-work sleep, right? Um, if you're working like 3 p.m. to 3 a.m., you probably want to pre-sleep, right? As late as possible. You always sort of set it up, and I tell my clients this, you set it up where it's like your shift is regardless of the time of day, that's your morning, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, and this segues into nutrition a bit. It's like my first meal of the day, my breakfast would be after I've woken up because I'm breaking the fast of sleeping, and it's before I go to work on day shift, right? So if I'm working, as an example, if I'm working 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., that's my day shift. I'm going to get up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and my first meal is going to happen about 6:30, right? Um, and then that's my first meal. Now, if I was to sleep before my nights at 6 p.m., and let's say I sleep all the way until, if I'm really lucky and the planets are aligned, I sleep all the way till 4 p.m., and I wake up, and my first meal of the day, my breakfast, is going to be at 5 p.m., right? So I'm talking about two different things here at once. I'm talking about pre-sleep, which is important, and I'm also talking about where the nutrition sort of comes in, setting up your meals, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's another one. Even because kind of going back to what I just said, because I'm basing this kind of off one of my clients currently, because they
yep,
have three and it kind of like it rotates, you know what I mean? But then
yep,
what they'll sometimes do is he's like, well, I need to kind of like reset. And then instead of getting, reset, like instead of actually getting more sleep, then it's almost like, no, they just skip a night of sleeping almost, they get like 2 to 4 hours and then it's like, oh,
yeah.
and then I'll take it from there. You know what I mean? So I was
Well,
like,
yeah,
fuck,
and
that's
I'm
rough.
shaking my head. I've heard about doing that, and geez, it makes me cringe. Part of it makes me cringe, but I also understand it. Um, and that's that whole getting back. I'm using fancy words
Mm,
here: circadian rhythm entrainment, right?
yeah,
Getting back into a normal circadian rhythm pattern, and that's really important. Like if you have a great schedule, and let's say you're a firefighter and you do 24-hour shifts. I don't do 24s, but if you do 24s or you do 48s, you don't work that much over the course of a month. So it does give you time to have to get back into a normal rhythm. And that's really important. And that's something, I talk about sleep as a priority, but talking about getting back into a normal sleeping pattern, that's probably your number one priority, right? Like as soon as you're finished your nights and you have some days off, it's really important. And if that involves staying awake and being a little sleep deprived, let's say that first day, but then after your night, and so this is what I'll do. Like if I have a really crappy night on my last night shift, I come home, I'm not sleeping. I'm just going to like suck it up, get through the day. And then that night, it's like, yeah, I'll probably be tired. I'm going to try to set everything up good, like no electronics, shut the caffeine down early, go to bed, like make sure my sleep hygiene is like on point, and hopefully that night I'll get a solid sleep, and that gets me back into like the normal sleep wake cycle. Really, really important. From a career longevity point of view, that's the number one thing you can do, right? Is you're constantly battling sleep deprivation and circadian rhythm disruption. So your number one goal is circadian rhythm entrainment, getting back into that normal sleep wake cycle.
yeah, yeah. It's tough as well because I have people who are in the 40s, 50s, some 20, 30s.
Mhm.
It also just kind of depends, like if it's something they just kind of do. Because I do know a few who kind of do that for summer. Like they're off from their studies and they'll just do that to earn a little extra money. But also people who kind of like continue to do that for like 30 years. It fucking adds up. you know
It
like
does add up.
it's a
Yeah,
long
nights where
term, like.
yeah, like I know how I'm going to feel when I'm really sleep deprived, and then it's interesting. I have this conversation with other people, and they talk about being oh, I'm so tired, and I'm just like, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. You can be so tired that it's like every nerve in your body hurts. Like that's true sleep deprivation. Um, but over the course, yeah, like I mean, I know exactly how I'm going to feel on 4 hours of sleep, 5 hours of sleep, six, seven, 0 hours of sleep, and then I'm very self-aware in what I'm able to do, right? So if I'm like, oh, I feel this tired, okay, well, I know I can do some maybe zone one, easily do zone one cardio, might be able to do zone two cardio. I know that's not going to negatively affect me, will probably make me feel better. Um, I'm definitely, if I'm sleep deprived, I'm definitely not going to do so many high intense intervals, any CrossFit stuff. No, no chance that's happening, right? One rep maxes, back squat, probably not. You know, doing sets of 20, probably not. Um, but it's like I understand my limits on that. I understand, what I can handle as far as external stressors. Um, but that's come over the course of 30 years, right? And you do figure that out, and I think it's important to figure that out early. And it's you definitely have to have the mindset of not pushing through, right? There's a time and a place. It's like, yeah, okay, I have fatigue, should I train? There's a time and a place to say yes, right? I think people can easily make the excuse not to train, and then you fall, and I believe we talked about this last time, you fall into that pattern of like, oh, I'm just tired, so I'm going to take a day off. Well, you know what? Sometimes you do have to say, suck it up, buttercup, and get the fuck to the gym, right? Um, but if we're talking about sleep deprivation, it's like you need to sort of figure out what's going to do the least amount of harm, because training is a stressor. People don't, and often people fail to realize that. Like, any type of training is a stress. Human beings are awesome pieces of machinery where we can adapt to that stress and get bigger, faster, stronger, right? But the stress has to be in the right dose, right? The devil's always in the dose. Um, so we need to consider training as a stress and sleep deprivation as a stress. And this is where the synergistic effect happens. 1 + 1 = 10, right? As far as the compounding effects of the stressor. So if I've got 0 hours of sleep, but I'm Johnny Rocket and I want to do CrossFit, and I'm going to blow myself up that day at the gym, your recovery from that is going to be impeded so much you have no idea, right? It's like Dr. Matthew Walker has a great book on, it's called Why We Sleep. And he's definitely one of the best sleep experts out there. And he talks about how insulin resistant we can become on a night of sleep deprivation, and where our body will preferentially partition calories into fat versus, replacing glycogen or downregulating muscle protein synthesis. Like, the effects of sleep deprivation can be really profound, acutely and chronically, right? Um, and if you couple that with trying to train, especially in a performance-based sport, it's going to result in the machine breaking down over time, for
Yeah.
sure. I know I got
Yeah.
on totally there, yeah, but
No, but it's good that you brought that up, because I know a few who do CrossFit, including a client of mine, preferably 6 times a week. 5-6 times,
yeah,
usually on very little sleep. Like it,
yeah,
so it's actually a good thing that we're talking about this, because it's also one of those things, because you did mention, right, stress. We think, oh, that's work or financial stress or relationships, but the body, as much as, because I have this conversation all the time, because people think like, hey, it's my stress relief. Working out
yep.
is my way of de-stressing. Actually, no.
Well,
It's
yeah, you do have to be sympathetic when people say that, because I
yeah,
totally get it, right?
me too.
And
It's
yeah,
a nice
I mean,
outlet.
oh yeah, I mean, the antidepressant effects of exercise are
Yeah,
profound. They're huge,
yeah,
right? And it's real, right? And
yeah,
people will, and you could be doing way worse things, right? Like when I have a client who wants to push through stuff, and they're like, "No, I can't give up the gym." It's like, that resonates with me. I get that. Um, and as a coach, sometimes you just got to like pull back a little bit on them, be like, "Okay, I understand you want to do this." And CrossFit's a great example, because I trained at a high level for me, relative for me. I tried to train at a very high competitive level for a very long period of time. And what I found, as I started to get a little bit older, now this was in my late 30s, early 40s, um, I was getting really sick. It's like, so what I talk when I say really sick, it's like 4 to 5 to 6 times a year, I was coming down with really bad respiratory infections, right? And I was like, man, like it was, my immune system was taking a pounding, but it's because I was pushing in a very anaerobic based sport, and also trying to do shift work. And in addition, lots of other stressors in my life that everybody has, right? It's like kids and work and relationship stress and all that. But it's like basically the sleep deprivation, the performance-based training, and then also travel in that too, right? I had a lot of travel at that time. And that's also something else that'll absolutely crush your immune system is travel. Um, but that just caused me to realize it's like, this is not sustainable for me, right? And so it's like, okay, my shift work, that's something that's not going to change, or I chose not to change that, right? Some people do. They're like, okay, I can't do the shift work anymore. I'm going to leave this shift work, get into a totally different career. And lo and behold, their life drastically changes when they're like, whoa, I got lots of energy. I'm making progress in my sport of choice, whether that's aesthetic based or performance based. It's like my relationships are better, my mood's more stable. It's like it can be a life changer to get out of that. But if you choose not to, then it's like, what did I have to change? Eventually, I transitioned out of CrossFit, and man, it completely changed. I was like, wow, I'm not getting sick. Wow, I feel really good. I'm not beat up. My joints don't hurt. Oh, I'm making progress, from a body composition point of view now. Like lots of stuff happened when I got out of CrossFit. I'm not saying CrossFit's bad, but it's a very stressful sport, right?
Yeah.
And you have to realize that if you're doing CrossFit and you're doing shift work, it's like those are two of the hardest things to do ever.
Yeah.
And you put them together and it's like rarely ever have I seen it be sustainable. And there's anomalies out there, right? There, without a doubt, there's some amazing athletes out there that can do both. But eventually stuff happens.
I was gonna say, like, it's probably still a matter of time. This is where, some people are like very resilient, others just notice right away. But I would
Yep.
say, like, at some point, if it's a long term, we're gonna hit a wall. And like, I mean, I hit a wall just from like work and
Hmm.
also doing CrossFit without the sleep deprivation, even though I was
Yeah.
basically just going all the time. But like that was without the shift work and stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
And
for sure. Everybody does have a breaking point. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, the question I get thrown at me a lot is they're like, okay, so if you don't want me, so if I'm coming off a night shift, but I really want to train,
yeah,
but I know I'm sleep deprived, but you don't want me doing this CrossFit stuff. It's like, what can I do? Because it's like this client is like, hey, I really want to train. This is really important to me. It makes me feel good. It's my mental de-stressing. Um, this is my experience, and this has been echoed in a lot of clients. Stick to something okay, this is going to sound really boring, but monostructural zone 2 cardio. And people are going to be like, okay, what the hell is that, Mike? So it's something like getting on the assault bike or getting on the treadmill or getting on the rower. We can talk about each of those pieces of machinery specifically too if you want to. Some are better than others, but doing something cyclical in a controlled steady state manner in zone 2, and I'm talking zone 2, that's where we're talking heart rate there. So for me, zone 2 is like 100 in and around like 120, 130 beats per minute on my heart. So it's really easy to maintain. That's going to have the least amount of stress on your body. You're still going to have some caloric expenditure, some caloric output. It's going to cause like some dopamine to be released. It's going to cause some norepi, some epinephrine to be released, but it's not going to cause a big cortisol spike. And that's what's happening when we're going very anaerobic. It's causing this like fight or flight response. And we don't want that when we're sleep deprived. We don't want to be dumping all these catecholamines, having this sympathetic response when we're already sleep deprived. It's like, dude, I'm running from the bear and I'm already sleep deprived. It's just like, it's extremely hard on the body, right?
yeah,
So yeah, I tell clients to do that. I'm like, if you're going to lift, go easy, right? Reduce your volume, reduce your weights. Like this is not the time to do max effort stuff. And it's interesting. I've actually hit some very solid PRs in both lifting and with pushing, like let's say anaerobically when I've been sleep deprived. Now, it's not a good thing to do, right? This sometimes will happen, and I call it harnessing cortisol. You already have um, cortisol being secreted because you're sleep deprived. Your body's under stress. It's like, wow, I don't have enough rest. This is not a good situation. I need to secrete some cortisol to get shit done. you start training, it's sort of you're enabling a sympathetic response. Um, I've hit some PRs, but then recovery the next day is terrible. It's terrible, right? So I don't recommend it. And sometimes you'll start training and you'll feel really good. You're like, oh, check it out. I only got 4 hours of sleep, but I feel amazing today. I'm going to push hard. Total normal thing for an athlete mind to do. But you should be thinking, maybe I should dial this back today. I only got 4 hours of sleep. Maybe I'm going to cut my training short. I'm not going to push hard. I'm only going to go 70%. Or today, I'm just going to jump on the assault bike, do an easy 30 minutes, where I'm breathing, I can still talk, I'm going to be hitting zone 2, something like that. Much more productive from a longevity point of view versus, going balls to the wall.
Yeah. What about like bodybuilding type of training?
Yeah. I mean, and that's predominantly what I do now.
Yeah.
If I'm sleep deprived and I'm going to train, these are my rules. I'm not saying this has to be anybody else's rules. I probably won't do legs. Legs is something that'll cause a lot of like central nervous system stimulation. And it can be really hard to recover from that. Right. Without getting too detailed, if you're going to do some traditional bodybuilding lifting, just go a little lighter. Right. And just realize today you might not be able to hit, like I'm going to pick up some numbers. Let's say you're doing bench press and you do 225 for 10. That's your normal. You work up to that. That's your top set, 225 for 10. On the day you're sleep deprived, number one, you probably won't be able to do that, right? Everything's going to feel heavier. When we train under sleep deprivation, our time to exhaustion is much quicker. And this is key, our rate of perceived exertion is incredibly high. So even if your strength output potential is there, that weight's going to feel like 10 tons and it's going to feel way harder. And you just have to accept that and maybe back off of that. Right. So just go lighter and cut your volume if you're going to do that. Right.
Yeah.
On that day, you're not making gains. At the best, you're just maintaining. That's what you have to think of. If you're sleep deprived and you're training, this is just an active recovery day, right? And if you have multiple days per week in which you're sleep deprived and you're trying to train, then you need to take a look at your lifestyle. You're like, okay, if this job I have is really crushing me this much, I'm trying to live a healthy lifestyle. What's the factor that I need to fix? It actually might be your job. And that can be a hard one for people to accept. It's very easy to change your training. It's very hard to change your job, right?
Yeah.
But you just need to work around that, right? So,
yeah. What about kind of like, because this is probably a question I can imagine comes up for people. What would be a good like amount of days training per week? I know there's like not one answer, but because people usually want to go like 6 or 7 times if they can,
totally.
or at least when
totally.
they're into fitness, I should say. Not everyone,
but and I get asked this a lot. If we take the shift work or sleep deprivation out of this, what's a good volume of days to train per week? I'm very much a fan of high frequency training. Now that's very different than high volume or high intense training. We got frequency, we've got volume, and we've got intensity, right? I think doing something every day is really important, right? Now, where I've seen clients make the most gains, be it performance or be it aesthetics, doesn't matter. It's in that range of like 4 to 6. 4 to 6 times a week, if you're doing something towards your goal, whatever that goal might be, there's a very good chance you're going to make progress. Now, this is nuanced because we could talk about, okay, is this performance based? Is this body composition based? Is it just general health, right? I think having that frequency there enables like the consistent repetition of training, which is one that regardless of the factor, that's the one that seems to elude most people, right? It's like they can't get on a consistent schedule, right? So the consistency piece is there. I think moving on a daily basis, just being the human beings that we are, is super important because a lot of what we do, just like we're doing right now, is sitting. We don't move enough, right? We do need to move more, without a doubt, right? Most people, there's a select group that maybe needs to move less, but that's not very many people. If we're talking about lifting, specifically, and let's say we're talking about body composition, um, this is where I think maybe more is better. You can push the envelope on training with bodybuilding styled training. The recovery from that is much different than it is from performance based sport. It's much easier. I'm not saying the sport or the hobby or the pursuit of bodybuilding is easy, but it's easier to recover from that. The effect of, like, let's say the central nervous system fatigue that'll happen if I do a push day. I'm going to talk push. I'm like, talking like chest, triceps, shoulders, pushing movements is very, very little compared to if I did like an hour of CrossFit or an hour of like heavy deadlifts or something like that. Right. Um, or, assault bike sprints, the effect on my central nervous system is much less. So I can recover from that. Right. Um, if we talk about aerobic training, we can get really high frequency on aerobic training. And it just depends on how hard you're pushing. If you're truly doing aerobic training and it's heart rate controlled, you could technically do that every day if you have the athletic capacity built up to do that, right? If you're sedentary, you can't just jump in and do like 7 days a week, right? So I'm getting really long-winded on this. I think more is better, right? Now, if we chuck in that nasty sleep deprivation in there, it really depends. Priority would be rest. Second, if you're going to train, you got to keep it light. So on a personal note, I'll usually train if I'm sleep deprived in some form, and I'll gravitate to cardio. I've never liked doing cardio. It's funny because the stuff I post on my social media, people think I'm like some assault bike freak cardio machine. I'm not. I don't really like it, but I do it because I feel good after, right? Like, especially after a night of sleep deprivation, if I get on the assault bike for 30 minutes, I feel really good after, right? So that's why I do it.
That's zone two.
And then what's that? Yeah, zone two. Yep, for sure. Yeah. And like everyone's zone two is going to be a little different. It's heart rate based, but it's like, but it's like, it's a pace that you can maintain for like 30 minutes. And if I said, no, hey, right at the 30-minute mark, I'm like, you got to do another 20 minutes. You'd be like, oh, okay, I could do that. That's probably zone two if you're not doing heart rate controlled, right? You get into stuff where it's like, God, I really want this to end because this hurts. You're no longer aerobic. You're going anaerobic, right?
Yeah, and that's the difference, because it's not like you're okay. Yes, it's high frequency in terms of like how often you're going. I mean, per week, but it's also not. Hey, I'm gonna do a CrossFit all out for a full hour. You know what I mean? Like you're doing some chill stuff, kind of.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean the training. Just to circle back, it's like I'm a big fan of high frequency training. Like if I could, I would probably do something 7 days a week. I mean, just because of like other obligations, shift work, stuff like that. I mean, I don't, right? And there's a time and a place to take a complete day off, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to move every day for sure.
Cool.
Yep.
Let's tie this into caffeine use, because I feel like that's a big one. And full transparency, I've been drinking too much coffee, and this morning I decided that in August I'm going to try to do at least 2 weeks without. I've done 30 days before, but I'm at a point where I have to. I really have to. It's been too much. I will say that. I will admit that on air. I'm drinking too much caffeine right now.
Now the accountability is there. Now you have to do it.
Honestly, that's one of the reasons I'm bringing it up too. But I remember doing it. It was hard. The first week, 2 weeks kind of sucks. And then it just becomes, it's whatever, Listened to a really cool audiobook back then, which Aaron Straker recommended to me. I think it's literally just called Caffeine, I think. But he kind of talks about like the effects and what it does, and how the dude like who wrote it also kind of went off during that process. And at the end, he also starts drinking coffee again. But I like that. I think it's been like 2 years, so I gotta do that again. But anyway, in that similar kind of space, with especially now I'm thinking my CrossFit friends, energy drinks, they're all over the place. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
You see people slam cans like 9 p.m. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's
a big thing. It's a big thing with with the younger crowd for sure. I see
Yeah.
a lot more younger guys and gals, doing the like the monsters and the bang energies and the energy drinks versus the coffee, right? And when it comes down to it, everyone's just looking for that caffeine.
Yeah.
Yeah, caffeine is a fucking crazy interesting drug. Probably the most consumed stimulant in the world. Been around forever. Generally, the main transporter for caffeine, as people know it, is from coffee and coffee beans. Um, yeah, I mean, and I think I'm very pro. Well, I'm very pro coffee. Coffee has a lot of health benefits, and I always sort of use coffee and caffeine interchangeably.
Hmm.
Um, I think if we're talking specifically about caffeine, I think caffeine is demonized a bit. Now, this is going to make me sound very pro caffeine, and I'm not. But I think it's demonized, and I think people will blame a lot of their issues on maybe like having too much coffee. And yeah, you can drink too much coffee, or you can have too much caffeine for sure, right? Um, so one of the key points, takeaways, I mean, after I'm going to get ahead of myself, I'm going to start babbling about a whole bunch of stuff. But one of the key points that I want people to remember is the half life of caffeine is anywhere from 5 to 10 hours. Um, and what that means is in that amount of time, your body will eliminate half of that dose that you take in. So if I take in 100 milligrams of caffeine, that's about the average cup of coffee. You'll have about 100 milligrams. In 5 hours, it'll be down to 50 milligrams. So it hasn't been completely eliminated from my body, right? And that's key. Um, if there's one thing that's going to cause major sleep issues, it's going to be caffeine. And people will become caffeine dependent. And if you're a shift worker, you absolutely know how awesome caffeine is, right? Like it can become a crutch. And I mean, I'd been drinking coffee for quite a long time, but I think when I got into paramedicine school and doing studies, I became very heavily addicted to caffeine, right? Where it was a necessity. It was like the fourth macronutrient, right? It's like it had to happen every day, or bad shit would happen. Um, you can have too much, but and people are always like, "Oh, how much is too much?" And they want a number, and I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to tell you 2,000 milligrams or something ridiculous." And I'm also not going to say, "Oh, you know what? Maybe you should only have 300 milligrams. Maybe you should only have 3 cups of coffee." It's real. Once again, it's very individual, right? The key is, how do I take it in without it screwing my sleep up? Because we need to remember, it's a drug, and you need to dose it at the appropriate time. And there's also something to consider about cycling it too, right? There might be a time when you don't want to take it in, right? Like you're about to do like 30 days or 2 weeks maybe of caffeine free, which is awesome. Like I've done that too. I used to do that yearly, and I've just gotten lazy and I haven't done it. I don't think that's a bad thing to do, because it makes you realize, one, how much you depend on it. Two, what it feels like to be off of it. And then one of the biggest things that I noticed was like how my energy levels were really normalized through the day. And it was like coming off of that caffeine, it was like the first couple of days, yeah, you get a headache. Yeah, you kind of feel like garbage. And then I found by the third day, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. This is good. Right. And for other people, it might be a week. Other people might not notice anything, depending on how much you take in. But you can get caffeine withdrawals for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to shift work, people are like, hey, you know what? Like I need to drink it during my night, in the middle of the night, 2 a.m. I'm driving around in a cop car. I got zero chance of sleep. I have to be alert. I need to have caffeine. Or they're like, can I have caffeine? I'm like, it definitely isn't the most optimal thing. But one, you're already awake at 2. You should be asleep, but you're not because of the career choice you've picked. So yes, maybe you might need that caffeine. But to echo what I said before, it's like, think about when you're going to go to sleep, right? If it's like, okay, when I get off shift at 7 a.m., I'm going to come home, probably going to have a light breakfast, going to go to sleep about 9. So give yourself at least 6 hours, if not more, not to have that caffeine. Because if you're cranking on a rock star at like 5 in the morning and you plan on sleeping at like 8 a.m., it's probably not going to happen, right? So you need to time it. Timing is everything when it
Yeah.
comes to caffeine. It's like the best time to take it. first thing in the morning or pre-workout. That's the
Yeah.
best time to take caffeine in, right? Like my cutoff for myself is 3 p.m. and that's probably a little late for me, right? Because if I go to bed at 10, it usually doesn't affect my sleep, right? But maybe a better cutoff would be like noon. Give yourself like a more time than you think to eliminate it from your body. And people think, oh, I can drink coffee and then go to sleep. If you're that person, you actually need to consider what you're doing in your life where caffeine doesn't affect you, because it will. You won't have the perceptible effects of the stimulation, but it's still negatively affecting, or not negatively, it's still affecting your adenosine receptors, and that's really what it does. It just antagonizes your adenosine receptors and causes you not to feel fatigue, right? But if you can take it in and go right to sleep, that's a bit of an issue, right?
That was me. I used
Yeah.
I used to be when I came to Norway. I used to work as a Northern Lights tour guide.
Oh
So I
yeah.
would take people around. I would also do the driving myself, and it was really a matter of like looking for clear sky, because the weather here can suck, and you just need clear sky. So
Yeah.
sometimes we would drive all the way to Finland, which is like 2.5 hours from here. So I'd be on my way back from Finland, like I don't know, 1, 2 a.m., 2 a.m.,
Yeah.
and drink coffee on the way back home, and to then fall asleep. Like I would maybe drink coffee still at maybe like let's say like 1:30, get home maybe 2:30, and I was just like gone like right away. Um,
Yeah.
Pretty happy I'm not doing that anymore, by the way.
Yeah, no
But
kidding. Yeah. I mean, if someone's falling asleep immediately, like let's say they have a cup of coffee and half an hour later they're going to sleep, um, their fatigue level is so
yeah,
high that caffeine is not stimulating enough to keep them awake,
right.
right?
And
So
that's
it's
what was
like
happening.
it's not that you're immune to the caffeine. It's like you're just so fatigued.
You're fucking exhausted. That's the thing.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's there's other factors involved in that.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's yeah, it's like, and to bust a myth, and this has nothing to do with sleep or shift work. It's like it's not dehydrating. People are like, oh, how much is too much? Am I going to cause myself to get dehydrated? And, caffeine and coffee, it's not dehydrating. Um, but it's just that timing thing. Like I've seen people literally take in 2,000 milligrams. They're like, hey, am I taking in too much? I'm like, yeah, that's a pretty crazy dose. Over the long term, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a cardiologist. I don't know if that would have cardiac effects. It's hard to say. I mean, there is an LD50 for caffeine, like the lethal dose. Off the top of my head, I don't know what it is. You probably don't want to test it out. Um, I know from a personal point of view, um, I definitely don't feel great if I take in, like, let's say, a singular dose of like 300 milligrams, right? And I feel really gross if I do that. And it some of the performance effects when they've studied caffeine have gone up to like 600, 700 milligrams, and they've seen like some really awesome performance based improvements taking caffeine. Like it's an ergogenic for sure.
yeah,
That dose, I can't even imagine taking a dose like that. When I formulated Max Perform, which is a pre workout that I did for Nova 3 Labs and it's now Complex Nutrition, I only put 90 milligrams in there. A little goes a long way. But in some of these pre workouts and in some of the energy drinks, like you'll see like 180 milligrams, right? And in some of the pre workouts, you're talking like 200, 300 milligrams per scoop. And it's like, that's a big amount. So if you're taking in multiple energy drinks per day as your sort of vehicle of choice for caffeine, and you're doing a pre-workout, you might get up to close to like 1,000 milligrams a day. Like it's possible. And I'd say that might be too much, right? Like you're just, you need to harness the timing of that, especially for a workout, right? But if you need that much per day, it's becoming a crutch, right?
yeah,
Yeah, for sure. And it's like
yeah. That's
people don't get adrenal fatigue, or they don't develop HPA axis dysfunction from drinking too much coffee or having taken too much caffeine in. It just exacerbates what's going on, right?
mm,
So
yeah. But I'm also curious about then with the studies and stuff too, because it is very individual,
mhm.
like how much there will be a difference from person to person in like how much it we're already drinking. You know what I mean? I'm sure that there's going to be a different response too.
Well, yeah, everybody tolerates, like some people don't tolerate caffeine at all or any kind of stimulants. Like I do know a few people who are just like, yeah, I can't even have a cup of coffee or I feel like all shaky and stuff. It's just
Yeah,
too much, too sensitive to it, right? Um, I don't know what the gene is. So I've done my testing through 23andMe multiple times, and I've taken that raw data and I've run it through a bunch of other sites and whatnot. And you can be a slow or fast caffeine metabolizer. And I think that depends on your liver health. That depends on your genetics. Um, Supposedly, I'm a fast caffeine metabolizer. So that means that I will eliminate it quickly from my body. I find that interesting because, like I said earlier, if I drink it past 3 p.m., I have issues sleeping. Now, if you're like a small person, let's say you weigh 110 pounds, it's going to take you longer to metabolize the same amount of caffeine as somebody like I'm 200 pounds. It's going to take me half the time to metabolize that, right? Linear thinking there. Um, but yeah, to go back to the genetics, you can be fast or slow metabolizer, um, and that has to do with how sensitive you are, right? So
cool.
yeah, I mean, caffeine it's the most abused and used stimulant in the world. It's got its benefits, but it's just the timing is the key there. The timing
Yeah,
when you
yeah,
take
yeah.
it in.
Dude, when I went off and I had my first cup again, I fucked up
Hmm.
because it was 30 full days, like no caffeine, you know. And
Yeah,
like we planned it, you know. I went to a good cafe, and I think it must have been 2 p.m. or something. And I
yeah,
swear, like 2 a.m., I was like this in bed still, you know. I could not fall asleep. I was
yeah.
completely just wide awake.
You'll become sensitive to it if you do like a 30-day cleanse of caffeine
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
Um, One of the things that I don't know, did you want to talk about supplements for shift workers?
I think it would be good to kind of do almost like a bit of a recap and say, okay, cool. Yes, we talked about a lot of things now, but
Yeah.
what would be kind of like a practical takeaway for people? You know, like what would be something? Hey, whether it's nutrition, supplements, habits, lifestyle stuff, training. What would be like? Let's say maybe like top 3 to 5 things people could do.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Top 3 or 5 things people could do to offset shift work.
Yeah, kind of like
Oh boy.
bet like if you got to do something, like start with this. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, so number one, prioritize your sleep, right? And without going off on another tangent, I'll just leave it at that. So prioritize your sleep in and around your shift work, right? That's number one. Um, Number two would be, and we didn't really touch on this, but continue, or if you're not, you should be, like continue eating very nutrient dense food, right? Um, it's like there's a time and a place for processed food, and there's a time when we can handle it quite easily. Um, but if we're looking at what sleep deprivation does to us, one of the big factors with sleep deprivation, and there's lots of things, but it's like this systemic inflammation and specifically your neural inflammation. So there's a lot of brain inflammation that happens from sleep deprivation, right? Because it's like that's the organ that's really taking the brunt of it is your head, it's your brain, right? When we're sleep deprived. Um, so we want to minimize the effects of that, right? Um, so I was on number two there. I'm thinking about number three already. Some of the things that we could do. As far as your supplementation going back to the nutrient dense food, I mean, that's just going to offset that inflammation, right? You're going to continue to eat like in a calorically controlled, nutrient dense pattern, right? Spend a whole podcast talking about that. I'll just leave that at that. People are going to be like, what the hell is he even talking about? What am I supposed to eat? I'm like, just eat real food, man. Just eat real food. Um, as far as supplementation goes, you can't out supplement sleep deprivation. So the basics go back to the inflammation. It's like take your vitamin D, in the morning when you get up, right? Vitamin D should be dosed in accordance to the timing of it, the same as when the sun rises and falls. Take your vitamin D in the morning. That's when you're going to get the most. I'm getting mine right now. Fish oil for inflammation, curcumin, inflammation, multi-B complex, just to make everything work better, right? These are real basic things. For sleep, to help you sleep and normalizing that sleep cycle, really benign but important supplements would be like your magnesium, your zinc, potentially taking GABA. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Valerian root, it actually stimulates the GABA receptors, I believe. So it's similar to taking GABA. We had talked about melatonin. There's caveats with that. It might work, it might not, right? But that would help normalize your sleep cycle. Offsetting sleep deprivation, I don't know if I want to go down this one. There are some supplements that will help deal with sleep deprivation. Tyrosine is one of them. And this really has to do with breaking down, like it's basically a precursor to norepinephrine and dopamine. And you're going to be depleted of both of those when you're sleep deprived, right? One of my favorite supplements, and it's kind of one that flies underneath the radar, would be alpha GPC, which is a very bioavailable form of choline. Choline, we will break down into acetylcholine, which is an essential neurotransmitter, which is going to be used more when you're sleep deprived, and it's going to be depleted over if you're chronically sleep deprived. So I really like alpha GPC. I'm way off of just the top 5, I think. As far as training goes, continue to train, but attenuate your training, meaning like maybe bring it down a notch, right? Get a move on, get sweaty, but don't blow yourself up, but continue to move, right? We're going to be battling that inflammation that we built up from being sleep deprived, but we don't want to create more. We've got a lot of insulin resistance going on because we're sleep deprived. So we want to like stimulate that non-insulin sensitivity happening, right? And maybe last but not least, if you can, switch careers. Don't do shift work if you can. As much as someone told me that a long time ago, they said, do everything you can to get out of doing shift work. And I actually took it really personally because I'm like, no, I love my job. Why would I want to do that? But I understand what they're saying because it's one of those things that's going to eventually get you in the end, right? So, yeah. But if you choose a life of shift work, you got to do everything to battle the sleep deprivation.
Cool, awesome, man. Mm-hmm. Dude, thanks. Right. Thanks for coming back.
Well, thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure for sure. So, I mean, if anybody ever had any questions for me, you know where to reach me. Just get a hold of me on social media, on Instagram. It's the best place. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Cool. So we'll make sure to drop your info down below in the show notes as usual. Okay. Dude, I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, man. For sure.
And to the listener, thanks for listening. And we'll speak next week.